Gopalagaratidam yati singha goran Govinda deshikavaram satatam numa Uttama adama kichuna bachila jachiya dile kakola Kahe premananda emona goranga hridoya dariya bola Bhaja Goranga Kaha Goranga Laha Gorangera Namare Jai Jana Goranga Bhaje Se Hoyamara Pranare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Yashaiva Padambu Jabhakti Labhya Prema Vidana Paramatmata Tismai Jagan Mangala Mangalaya Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste. So I want to welcome all the devotees here tonight. We have a really big topic in front of us tonight. I got in discussion recently with some devotees about the purpose of Cāturmasya and other Vratas. And actually, it was a big group of people on WhatsApp, and I asked everyone, why do you do this? And I was a little shocked to see answers that were coming forth. It's a little confusing for devotees, these different vratas like Cāturmasya, like Puruṣottama-māsa, which here in India begins on the 18th of this month, or the month of Kartika, or Ekādaśī, or Bhishma Panchika, and these different days. Do Vaishnavas do that? Why do they do that? What is it? So I'd like to say a few things, mostly I guess about Cāturmasya, maybe some things about Ekādaśī and some things about Puruṣottama-māsa from a few different perspectives. And we're going to start from a distance, just like when you approach a mountain, it just looks like a big blob or something from a distance. But as you come closer, you start to make out the form of individual trees, and you can understand some more purpose for the mountains, some variegatedness of the mountain. So the Cāturmasya goes from the Sayan Ekādaśī month of Asada to the Uttana Ekādaśī month of Kartika. And Shayana means to lay down, and Uttana means to get up. So this is the time which is considered to be the nighttime for the Devatas. And it's a time which said that Lord Vishnu is sleeping. So Srila Prabhupada writes in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 4, text 169. I'm going to paste this in. And Luke, would you like to read?
Sure. From Srila Prabhupada in the Madhya Lila, Cāturmasya should be observed by all sections of the population, he wrote. It does not matter whether one is a grihasta, householder, or a sannyasi renunciate. The observance is obligatory for all ashrams.
So Prabhupada put some stress on Cāturmasya. And he also told devotees how, in his purport, this is from Chaitanya Charitamrita, he also described how devotees should perform it. Go ahead and use this. Luke, why don't you read that also?
This is not very difficult. In the month of Shravan, one should not eat spinach. In the month of Bhadra, one should not eat yogurt. And in the month of Ashvin, one should not drink milk. One should not eat fish or other non-vegetarian food during the month of Kartik. Similarly, Masoor dal and Urad dal are also considered non-vegetarian. These two dals contain a great amount of protein, and the food rich in protein is considered non-vegetarian.
Okay. And Luke may like this one here, I think. I'll let you read this one. You will like this. This is from Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is. Go ahead.
Under the Cāturmasya vow, the candidate does not shave for 4 months during the year, July to October. He does not eat certain foods, does not eat twice in a day, or does not leave home.
So that's a statement from Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is. And let's see. Just give me one moment. Yeah, that's from chapter 4, text 28, Prabhupada's purport. So it would seem that this is an important thing, right? But on the other hand, how many devotees observe all these fasts? And why do we observe these fasts? Do we just do it because Prabhupada said so? You know, you just shouldn't eat yogurt in the month of Bhadra. There was a discussion going around recently in some different places that I saw where Srila Prabhupada went to one temple and he asked for yogurt. And the devotee said, oh, Srila Prabhupada, there's no yogurt in the temple. And Prabhupada said, why not? The temple should have yogurt. And Prabhupada, they said, well, Prabhupada, it's during the Cāturmasya and we're fasting from. Prabhupada said, who says? Well, they said, well, Pradyumna Prabhu said. And Prabhupada said, I am not following Pradyumna. You bring some yogurt. And I personally spoke with Harisari Prabhu, and I wrote to Shruti Kirti Prabhu, two of Prabhupada's, probably Prabhupada's two most prominent servants. And I asked him a very simple question. Did Prabhupada follow these injunctions of not taking spinach and yogurt and milk? And of course, he observed not eating non-vegetarian food during the month of Kartika, but did Prabhupada observe these other things? And they said no. They never saw Prabhupada do it. Harisari Prabhu did comment to me, though. He said that Prabhupada, it was clear that Prabhupada appreciated it. Prabhupada was happy when devotees did that. So now let's ask a question. Why do we even do these things? What does it mean? Just why spinach? Why not broccoli or whatever, eggplant or this or that? Why particularly spinach? During the month of Cāturmasya, it's the rainy season. And during the rainy season, I can tell you here, we're in Mayapur right now, when I go for walks, I have to be so careful because there's just insects and all kinds of creatures all over the ground, especially these little ants, because the groundwater level has risen and they have nowhere to go. And so during Cāturmasya time, persons who were sannyasis and sadhus practicing ahimsa, they took a vow to stay in one place to avoid harming any of those little creatures so that they wouldn't travel during that time. So really Cāturmasya in that sense is about two things. It's about the rainy season and it's about avoiding hurting living entities. Now, as far as these four aspects of it go, I haven't found any description in Shastra or from our acharyas. It is mentioned in Hari Bhakti Vilas that one should observe fasting of these four different items in the particular months given. And Srila Prabhupada didn't just mention that also in Chaitanya Charitamrita. But I haven't found any explanation of it. But what I have found is some local explanation, because in Orissa, there's a very, very traditional culture. The common people observe these kind of four fasts, although it's not necessarily even so conscious. During the month of Shravan, they don't eat leafy vegetables because during that time, the insects are all over the plants. And if you get some cabbage, if you get some spinach or something, it's full of little insects and eggs and things. And it's very, very, unless you really, really wash it a lot, you're probably going to be eating some little entities. So many sadhus, therefore, they don't take that item during that month of Shravan. In the month of Bhadra, when the rainwater has risen further, people don't take yogurt generally in the Rishya, and that's because the weather is a little hot and rainy, and it's not very good for yogurt culture. In the month of Ashvin, the rainwater's gone up so high, and by that time it's become contaminated. And the cows, commonly they're drinking water from all over the place, and their milk sometimes becomes a little toxic. And so in the month of Ashvin, people traditionally don't drink milk. And during the month of Kartik, that's a time in Orissa. Sometimes it's said that this is a vow for the widows, that they're supposed to be vegetarian during that month. and they commonly, they just take Jagannath Mahaprasad. But that's the modern practice of it. But traditionally, people understood, Kartik is a very special month, and so we should just eat completely vegetarian things. And even they don't take masur dal or urd dal because they have so much protein, which will make me agitated, and it's supposed to be more peaceful and supposed to be making things simple during this time. So this is something of the purposes of this. Very, very few devotees understand this. Personally, for myself, we'll come to this later on. I think it's a very good thing to follow, but we should do it for the right purpose. And we'll come back to that a little bit later. However, personally, I find it, and this is just my own personal comment, don't quote me on this, but I find it a little bit absurd if you're living in the Middle East or someplace where there's no rainy season, for you to observe these particular 4 fasts, or if you're a traveling sannyasi or something. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada neither gave stress on these things in his personal dealings, nor did he personally follow it. Now, let's speak a little more about Cāturmasya. In the Varaha Purana, there's a discussion between Dharani Devi, the earth, and Lord Varaha. And Dharani Devi, she comes to Lord Varaha, that's her husband, and she's very concerned about people who take birth in Kali Yuga because they're really bad off. They're very short-lived, they're ignorant, they have all kinds of diseases and coronavirus and things. And she's asking, is there some method in which people, even people in Kali Yuga, can get some benefit? And then Varaha smiled, and he told her there's a 4-month period known as Cāturmasya, in which any charity, any brata, any japa, any homa brings great, great benefits. And compared to other months during the year, the benefits you get during this Cāturmasya is multiplied many, many times over. So when Dharani Devi heard this, she asked, why amongst the 12 months are these 4 so auspicious? And so then Lord Varaha explained to her that in the year, the 6 months from Ashada is called Dakshinayana. And then the 6 months from Pusha are known as Uttarayana. So that Dakshinayana time, that's the night for the Devatas. And the Uttarayana time, that's the time of their awakening. So he told her that once he was sitting on the top of Mount Meru, and then all the different demigods approached him and they said, our dear Lord, it's Dakshinayana right now for us, it's nighttime. So we're going to take leave of you. And then at that time, one dark complexioned lady came before me wearing white sparkling clothes, and she offered her obeisances, and she told him, she said, my dear Lord, I'm Ratri, who's the Abhimanyu, the personification of this time of the year. And I'm very sad that during this time of year, there's no marriages that take place, etc. During Cāturmasya in Orissa, there's no marriages that take place. The day before Cāturmasya, oh my God, you hear there's so many parades and so much music and things going on. And the day after Cāturmasya is finished, again, it takes up like anything. So this lady came and she said, I'm this period of time and everybody hates me and says I'm inauspicious and I can't tolerate that, so you should please bless me. And so then all the Devatas, they prayed also to the Lord, you give her some mercy. And so then Lord Varaha told her that you have 3 yamas. A yama is a quarter part of the night or in this case, 2 months. And out of these 3 yamas, the first 2 yamas, the Cāturmasya period, that from now on is going to be very, very dear to me. And any pious deed that's performed during those 2 yamas of Cāturmasya brings forth great benefit. And among these 4 months, the benefits that you get will increase day by day. And that's the reason why the last month, Kartika, is the most beneficial. So when she heard that, she became very happy. That lady, and she went back to her home. And then Lord Varaha told Dharani Devi, so from that time onwards, this Cāturmasya period has become very dear to me, and I great benefit to anybody who chants extra japa, takes a bath, gives charity, does vratas, and things during this period. So we should understand, Thakur Bhaktivinoda has written an article, which I'd like to discuss some with all the devotees. And in that article, which is published in the Gaudiya, Bhaktivinoda Thakur speaks about 2 different types of Shastra. He says there's Smarta Shastra and there's Paramartha Shastra. Now, Smarta Shastra, in a simple way, we could say that Smarta Shastra is Shastra which is meant to help cultivate Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. And Paramartha Shastra is, in a simple way, to say that it cultivates bhakti. So depending upon the adhikar someone has, or the qualification, they'll be attracted to a particular type of rules and regulations. They might have a particular nishta, or they'll be fixed, they'll have a particular faith in those. And so some people, they have faith in the smārta-vicāra, smārta shastras. And when we speak about the smārta shastras, what does it mean? There's some shastras which are completely smārta shastras, but there's also many literatures, and even our Hari Bhakti Vilas, which gives so much smārta description. So a better phrase might be smārta-vicāra. Vichara means a consideration. Srila Prabhupada uses that phrase in one lecture in Vrindavan. We spoke about smārta-vicāra and gosvāmī-vicāra, or the consideration of the smārta Brahmins, those people who are Hindus, but their motivation is Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. Moksha at best, that's very rare even. But the gosvāmī-vicāra, their consideration is for Krishna prema. Now, all of this becomes very confusing for devotees because as we were speaking this morning, I'll tell you something very unpalatable. I was a poor brahmachari at the time in the Los Angeles temple, and I was doing some reading every morning after announcements, usually from Namamrita Srila Prabhupada. But on Ekādaśī, there was one book written by a particular sannyasi, which was taken from different Puranas, and like the Brahma-vaivarta Purana and others, and there's conversations between Krishna and Yudhisthira. And Krishna's explaining to Yudhisthira about the benefits of the Ekādaśīs. And so we were reading those every Ekādaśī, and different devotees to this day, you see every Ekādaśī, they send out these stories and things, and it sounds really good. They stopped reading those in the LA temple. Why did they stop reading? Well, it happened, and I was a poor brahmachari there, and it's unpalatable to even repeat but it's in the book, and it's in Shastra. I was reading, it said, and if you follow this particular Ekādaśī, even if you have sex with your wife during her menstrual period, you'll become free from that sin. It was a little embarrassing for me as a brahmachari to read that in front of all the Matajis and senior devotees. My face turned bright red. And I had a discussion afterwards with the temple president and said, come on, this is complete nonsense. So that book is spoken by Krishna to Yudhisthira. And all the devotees say, well, this is so nice. Krishna to Yudhisthira says this, and it's really encouraging everybody. And you can be purified, you can get this, and you can get that. But at the same time, what about benefits like what we just said? I don't even want to repeat. Or other places where it said you'll get many children, you'll go to the heavenly planets, you get this. That's not things for devotees. Let's turn to Hari Bhakti Vilas. In the 15th chapter of Hari Bhakti Vilas, in text 247 to 542, I wrote an article about this some years ago, it describes the glories of Janmashtami and how to observe it. And so I'm bringing up Janmashtami as an example of a particular brata. And so in text 266, Gopal Bhatta Goswami gives an introduction to the section describing 3 reasons for observing Janmashtami. He says, Nityatam cha param tasya bhagavat prinanam matam vidi vakya visesach cha karane pratyavavyata. It's done for 3 reasons. Number 1, because it's bhagavat prinanam. It's very dear. Krishna becomes pleased when someone observes it. 2, vidi vakya visesha. There's some special shastric injunctions ordering it to be followed. And karane pratyavatyavata. It's a fault not to observe it. And so then Hari Bhakti Vilas gives it gives 1 verse speaking about how it pleases Krishna. And then there's almost 100 verses describing what's going to happen if you don't observe Janmashtami. And it's really terrible. I mean, you will burn in hell. And then there's some verses, another maybe 100 or so verses describing the benefits of doing it. And you can become Indra, and you'll get a beautiful wife, and you'll get lots of money. Maybe you'll become a GBC member. You'll get so many wonderful benefits if you observe Janmashtami. So if you just read through that section very quickly, you might become really confused. You might even think, well, Hari Bhakti Vilas says that you're going to go to hell if you don't fast properly on Janmashtami, so you better fast. And it says that you can get a beautiful wife. Well, that's really good. I would like that. So I'm going to observe Janmashtami for that reason. We should understand there are different purposes. Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Chaitanya Siksamrita, he says there are 4 reasons, why people worship the Lord. Bhaya, Asa, Kartibya, Buddhi, and Rāga. Bhaya means out of fear. And we see in this section of Hari Bhakti Vilas, there's a lot of fear that if you don't observe this brata, then you will burn in hell. And asha means some greed or some desire that if I do this, I'm going to become a GBC or the temple president, or I'll get a beautiful wife or husband, or I'll get this or that, a lot of money or whatever. And Bhaktivinoda says Bhaya and asha are very low class. Better than Bhaya and asha is Kartibya Buddhi. Kartibya Buddhi means the sense of having some obligation. I owe it to the Lord. I owe it to Gurudev that I should do this. And he says, Kartibya Buddhi is better than Bhaya and asha, which are very low class. But the real purpose is Rāga, is to have spontaneous devotion. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that Nam Sankirtan is so wonderful, so nectarian, that it immediately helps to bring one to a higher level. So similarly with Cāturmasya, the Hari Bhakti Vilas, 15th Vilas speaks about that. It quotes the Bhavishya Purana, the same Purana which most of those main Ekādaśī quotes come from. Yo vina niyamam martyo vratam va japyameva va Cāturmasyam nayan murko jivanapi mrito hisa. That anybody who performs Cāturmasya without following the rules and regulations, without fasting, chanting any japa, that person is considered to be dead, even though he's alive. And then Hari Bhakti Vilas, 15th chapter again, text 283 to 340, describe some amazing results. If you don't take salt during Cāturmasya, you'll get a sweet voice. If you don't use oil, you don't take oil in your food, then your life will be prolonged and you get lots of children. That's really important. If you don't take oil massage during Cāturmasya, then you'll get a beautiful body. If you don't cook with oil, your enemies will become vanquished. That's very, very important. If you don't take licorice or oil, then you become wealthy. If you give up wearing unoffered flowers, you really shouldn't wear unoffered flowers, then you become a Vidyadhara in the heavenly planets. If you give up the 6 types of tastes, spicy food, sour, bitter, sweet, salty, harsh, then you'll never become ugly, and you won't get a bad birth, and you won't become smelly. That's also really important. If you sing or play musical instruments in the temple of the Lord, then you will become a Gandharva. If you sprinkle water in the temple, then you'll get to go to Apsara Lok, and yes, you will enjoy like anything. If you take bath in a holy place, then your body will become pure. I'm sorry. If you only eat one meal a day, then you get the result of performing Agnihotra. And if you just eat like a cow, put your hands behind your back, you put the food down on the floor, and you put your face down, and however much you eat the first time you go down, you get so much benefit from that. It's really, really good. You'll probably become Indra or something like that. If you give up drinking water for 6 hours a day, you'll never get disease. If you take bath every day, then you won't ever see hell. It's really, really good. So in the Vishnu Sahasra, Lord Brahma tells Narad Muni that if someone accepts all these Vaishnava austerities and observances of devotion, then they'll obtain the supreme destination. So again, all these things become really confusing for devotees, and you hear about sometimes devotees doing them. Somebody recently was saying, well, the reason why Srila Prabhupada gave these things, Ekādaśī and all this, is because Prabhupada wanted to give us religion, but actually these things are not really important to do. But Prabhupada just did it because he wanted people to become religious. That really hurts my heart when I hear that, someone speaking like that. It means they haven't studied very deeply the teachings of our Goswamis, or the writings of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, or even the teachings of Srila Prabhupada. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that Ekādaśī is Bhakti Janani. It's a mother of devotion. In his article, which was later printed in a book, he wrote a series of articles in Sajjanatoshini Bhaktivinoda, which were later printed in a book called Bhakti Lok, which is a commentary on a couple of the verses of Upadeshamrita. Okay. Bhaktivinoda Thakur speaks a very, very powerful thing. I'd like to paste this in and ask Jai Gaurachan if you could read this. Are you there, Jai Gaur?
I'm here. One should. This is the one?
Yeah, one should.
Okay.
One should carefully.
One should carefully give up attachment for material assets. People in general have spontaneous attachment for household paraphernalia, clothes, ornaments, wealth, wife and children's health, their own health, eatables, trees, and animals. Some people are so addicted to smoking, chewing pan, eating fish and meat, and drinking alcohol that their practice of spiritual life is obstructed. Many people do not respect the Lord's remnants out of great attachment to eating things like fish. Because of the desire to constantly smoke, many people's study of devotional scriptures, relish for hearing and chanting, and remaining long in temples is obstructed. Attachment for these things is averse to the constant practice of devotional service. If one does not carefully give up these things, then he cannot get happiness from his devotional service. Attachment for these things is easily destroyed by the association of devotees. Still, one should try to destroy these petty attachments by fully engaging in devotional service. By observing vows approved in devotional service, those attachments are vanquished.
Okay, I think I'm going to read some because our internet connection is so bad. You're kind of going in and out. I'm afraid it's going to be hard for some devotees to appreciate. So just to summarize here quickly, Bhaktivinoda speaks about how people in general are very attached to household life and their own clothes and ornaments and things, and they're attached to sinful activities, eating meat and drinking and like that. And that attachment keeps them away from bhakti. So if one associates with devotees, that attachment's easily vanquished. Bhaktivinoda says, but still one should try to destroy these petty attachments by fully engaging in devotional service, by observing vows approved in devotional service. These attachments are vanquished. And then Prabhupada, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, goes on to explain more elaborately. I'm going to go ahead and paste this in so everybody can see it. You can copy it if you like. He says that when one properly observes Ekādaśī and appearance days of the Lord, those attachments are vanquished. And he said that the purpose of these rules are for diminishing our attachments. And therefore, there's different prescriptions for practicing devotional service while giving up all types of enjoyment on those days. And there are two types of eatables, he says, eatables which sustain our life and eatables which gratify our senses. And Bhaktivinoda says that eating grains and drinking are life-sustaining. Now, I have to comment here, a little Bengali comment. It's a little funny to me. This is a translation. Bhaktivinoda says, eating grains and drinking are life-sustaining. And then he says, fish, meat, pawn, intoxicants, and smoking are all for gratifying the senses. So in Bengali, the word for eating is kai. That's also what they say if you drink. It's also what they say if you chew pan, or if you smoke. I kai a bidi. I'm going to eat a bidi. It literally means they eat everything in that sense. The word eat is used for all of them. So that's the reason for this kind of translation here. So Bhaktivinoda says that on days of vows, unless one totally gives up sense gratifying items, it's not really a vow. So a vow means that we should give up all sense gratificatory food. And then he says, as far as possible, life-sustaining items should also be given up. In other words, you should fast completely, if possible, as far as possible. Bhaktivinoda goes on to describe that as far as possible, we should reduce the acceptance of life-sustaining edibles. He said there's no prescription for accepting the sense gratificatory items. We should just reject them. And he says one of the limbs of a vrata, a vow, is to diminish the devotee's propensity for enjoyment. And Bhaktivinoda says, if one thinks today somehow or other I will renounce, but tomorrow I'll enjoy profusely. So I'm going to fast for the month of Puruṣottama, but then I'm going to have a big bar of chocolate and some ice cream at the end of it, and I'm going to really have a good time. Huh? Bhaktivinoda says, no, that you don't understand. Won't be successful. So Bhaktivinoda goes on to explain how vows are usually done for 3 days. That means Dasami, Ekādaśī, and Dvadaśī. Generally, you begin your fast, your observance of Ekādaśī and the Dasami, you observe it on Ekādaśī, and you conclude on the Dasami. So it's 3-day observance. And Bhaktivinoda says that you begin doing these 3-day vows, as vratas, and then you do it for 1 month. And then you try to do it for 4 months, Cāturmasya. I'm trying to paste this thing in, and it just doesn't let me paste very much. Let's see. There we go. He says, but gradually the purpose is that you should give up your attachments for sense gratification and leave it off forever. And Bhaktivinoda goes on to say that for persons who desire to attain pure devotional service, the association of non-devotees and women is meant to be given up. And that Sri Sangha, Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains elsewhere. He says it doesn't mean associating with your lawfully wedded wife, but it means associating with a propensity for your personal enjoyment. Bhaktivinoda says it's extremely necessary for them to associate with sadhus in order to give up attachment for prejudices. Because again, this prejudice is a very detrimental thing. He says they must follow all the vows meant for Vaishnavas in order to give up attachment for material objects. One should not be negligent in these practices. One should follow these instructions with great care and respect. If one does not follow carefully, then cheating in the form of duplicity renders the whole endeavor useless. For those who do not have respect in this regard, Very heavy sentence. Attaining the devotion to Sri Hari becomes very rare, even after hearing from many births. Really, really heavy statement from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So, again, there's two different reasons why people observe all these different vratas, why they observe Janmashtami, three different reasons that we read from Hari Bhakti Vilas. But generally speaking, there's smārta-vicāra and gosvāmī-vicāra. And we, of course, want to follow the gosvāmī-vicāra. We want to observe these different vratas to please Krishna. And we observe Kartika for that purpose. And I want to try to make things a little short because I want to get on to Puruṣottama-māsa. So I'm not going to say much about Kartika right now. But Kartika is described in Skanda Purana, Ekata Kartiko Vatsa Sarvada Keshava Priya, that this Kartika is very, very dear to Krishna. And whatever pious activities you do in that month is indestructible. It's a very, very powerful thing. And whatever dharma you do is greatly increased. Similarly, in Bhakti Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami quotes Vishnu Dharma, speaking about Ekādaśī, Vaishnavo Vata Sorova Kuryat Ekādaśī Vrata, that everybody should follow Ekādaśī. Even they may be a worshiper of the sun, or they may be a Vaishnava, but everybody should observe Ekādaśī. So why do we observe Ekādaśī? I'd like to touch on this in a brief way. Sometimes devotees, they think that, oh, we observe Ekādaśī because the Papa Purush, it's said in Padma Purana, and it does. Padma Purana describes that the Papa Purush was given shelter on the day of Ekādaśī by Lord Vishnu. And it said there that, so anyone who eats grains on Ekādaśī, they're taking the Papa Purush. But if you think that taking Mahaprasad, that Mahaprasad can be contaminated by sin, the Hari Bhakti Vilas says, you'll get leprosy, you'll go to the worst place in hell, you'll lose your wife, your children, your family, you're going to suffer a terrible, terrible results of sin, because to think that prasadam is contaminated, the Papa Purushas in prasadam, is very, very wrong. That's not the reason why we observe Ekādaśī. Srila Prabhupada speaks about this in his purport to Bhagavad Gita 1154. I'm going to paste this in here again. I miss having devotees read, but I'm a little concerned about recording. He says, Prabhupada says, there are so many rules and regulations, and if one at all wants to understand Krishna, he must follow the regulated principles described in the authoritative literature. One can perform penance in accordance with those principles. For example, to undergo serious penances, one may observe fasting on Janmashtami, the day in which Krishna appeared, and on the 2 days of Ekādaśī, the 11th day after the new moon and the 11th day after the full moon. So Srila Prabhupada, in many different places, for example, one letter he wrote to Madhusudan, he said, Ekādaśī is observed for increasing the strength of devotion. So this is smārta-vicāra. But at the same time, we don't discourage smārta-vicāra. We don't discourage people who have that kind of adhikar, who may observe Ekādaśī because you get rid of sin. And sometimes I do an exercise in the temples. I've given several talks about Ekādaśī, and I've asked devotees, please tell me, which is the most important Ekādaśī of the year? And devotees are a little stunned. Usually somebody's asking us a question. Am I supposed to answer that? And they're quiet for a little while, and I encourage them. And finally, someone raises their hand and say, well, Pandava Nirjala Ekādaśī. Why? Well, because if you miss all the other Ekādaśīs, then you can make up for it with Pandava Nirjala Ekādaśī. And I say, wrong. Pandava Nirjala Ekādaśī is for poppies, for sinful persons. But for Vaishnavas, the most important Ekādaśī is Uttana Ekādaśī, the last Ekādaśī of the month of Kartika, the day which Gorgashodas Babaji left this world. And that's Uttana Ekādaśī, that's the day the Lord rises up And that's a day which is done for bhakti. The devotees really don't worry so much about Pandava Nirjala Ekādaśī because the devotees are not worried about pop. Krishna in the Gita assures us. He says, Sarva Dharmam Prityaga. He doesn't say Sarva Papa Prityaga. He doesn't say give up sin. He says give up Dharma. And Aham Tam Sarva Papabhyo Moksha Yishyami Masucha. I'll protect you from any sin. So devotees are not worried about sin. Devotees observe Ekādaśī for bhakti, but depending upon the adhikar qualification of that devotee. And different devotees have different attitudes. Basically, Balavi Vidyabhushan speaks about three attitudes: Swanishita, Parinishita, and Nirapeksha. And the Swanishita Sadak thinks, I have to do this because the Papa Purush is in grains, or I can't, I have to fast on Janmashtami or I'll go to hell. He's Swanishita, he has faith in that thing. I have to do all these rules and regulations. The Parinishita Bhakta is on a higher platform and he understands, really, I don't have to do all these things. I just have to observe bhakti, but still I'll do it because it helps me. Whereas a Nirapeksha Sadak, he may do it, he may not do it. He's a Paramahamsa. And for him, there's no rules and regulations. So these regulated principles of doing brata, they help us. We observe them because they help to bring us to Rāga-mārga. This is the reason why Gaudiya Vaishnavas do it. We're not so much interested in all these rules and regulations and like this. I'd like to come back to that in a few moments, but I'd like to begin by speaking about Puruṣottama-māsa. And this is from an article written by Thakur Bhakti-Vinod, where he says that persons who are adhikari, or they're eligible, they have for the smarta section of Shastra, they don't have any inclination and taste for paramarthik Shastras. They're thinking, I just have to follow Varnashram Dharma, and I have to get a nice Dharma Patni, good and chaste wife who covers her head and shuts up and just cooks all the time for me and cleans the house. And that's the most important thing. Or I have to be a Dharma Patni. They're thinking, and that's okay. That's good. Let that person behave like that. Little by little, they can come to a higher platform. So the smartas, they accept the scriptures. Everybody accepts scriptures according to their particular ruchi. And so they're adhikars for smarta shastra, and they don't have much regard for paramarthik shastra. In Bhakti-Vinod, he says that the purpose of these two different types of shastra is to help people to make progress in their consciousness by keeping them steady in their own particular respective adhikar according to their own qualification. And he says broadly, there's two types of adhikar, karma adhikar and bhakti adhikar. And as long as someone has karma adhikar, then he's going to get benefit from the smarta section of Shastra. And he's going to think, I have to follow this. And someone who has adhikar for bhakti, he shouldn't disturb that person's mind. But Bhakti-Vinod says, when someone develops bhakti adhikar, then by giving up karma adhikar, by giving that up, he develops a ruchi for paramarthik, or transcendental path. Very interesting thing. He says that by giving up the karma adhikar, that's how he develops a ruchi for it. So most of the rules and regulations of Shastra are following smarta considerations, and they're committed to karma. And so there's this month, which is called the Mala-mas, or Adhika-mas. It's the extra month. It's the Mala-mas. Mala-mas means the impure month. It's considered to be devoid of all auspicious activities. It's the leap month in the year. And the smartas, they say this month is very, very bad. They call it Mala-mas, the impure month. They also call it Chora-mas, the thieving month. It's described in the 31st chapter of the Brihanaradiya Purana, and how it became the queen of all the different 12 months of the year. So this Adhika-mas, or the king, he went once to Vaikuntha and complained to Lord Narayan, nobody likes me, everybody criticizes me, and nobody wants to do anything. I have no auspicious period of time during my month So please help me. Krishna's heart melted. And Krishna told him, Aham etar yata loke pratita Puruṣottama tatayam api lokeshu pratita Puruṣottama. He said, hey, just as I'm known in this world by the name Puruṣottam, so from now on, this Adhika-mās, this extra month, is also going to have my name, Puruṣottam. Asmai samapita arve ye gunamoyi samstita mad sandrisham upagamya masaramadipo bhavet jagat puja jagat vandyo maso yam tu bhavishyati sarve masa skamascha niskamo yam maya krita. He said, now I'm going to offer, Krishna said, I'm going to offer all my personal qualities to this month. And from now on, this month is going to be like an incarnation of me. And it's going to become the king, the monarch, the emperor of all of their months. And Sarve Masas, out of all the different months, this will be the most worshipable and most adored month of the year. Akama Sarva Kama Viva, Yo Dimamsam Prapujayet, Karmani Basmaset Kritva Mami Vaishyat Samsayam. He said that all the other months are sakama, meaning they grant material desires. But this month is niskama. It doesn't give material desires. And he says people who worship this month without any desires, or even with all types of desires, karmani basmasat krita, their karma will be burned to ashes. Eva samsayam, don't have any doubt about it. Kadachim mama bhaktanam mama paradati ganyate Puruṣottama bhaktanam na parada kadachana. He says such people will approach me. He said, but there's some problem. People, mama bhaktan amaparaditi. The problem is that people sometimes commit offenses. My devotees sometimes commit offenses. But in this month of Puruṣottam, they'll be protected from committing offenses. My devotees will be protected. And in this month, if someone fails to do something auspicious, then they won't get happiness. They won't get the benefit of this month. So he says, Yena harmachito bhaktya mase smin Puruṣottam dhana puta sukham bhuntva paschat goloka vasa bhakti. Persons who are filled with bhakti, who have this conception of bhakti as topmost, they'll take advantage of this month and they'll do extra worship of me. And then he says, Dana puta sukham bhuntva, after enjoying all kinds of wealth and they'll get nice children and happiness and things, then pascha goloka vasa bhakti, they'll eventually attain residence in Goloka Vrindavan. And it's also described in the Varaha Purana that the Pandavas, when they were traveling throughout the holy places during the 14 years of the exile, they performed this Puruṣottam Vrata. So there's different rules about Puruṣottam month, and I'm not going to go so much into all those, but we're just going to touch on them a little bit. That there's 3 different types of bath. Nadi snanam. Nadi means you can take bath in a river, and a river that meets the ocean is the best. That's the best bath. You could also take bath in a lake or pond or a well. You can take bath in your home. That's an ordinary bath. That's very good. And there's certain mantras you're supposed to chant that. But then Bhaktivinoda goes on to say that the main thing during Puruṣottama-māsa, Puruṣottama-māsasya daivatam Puruṣottama tasmat sma pujayed bhaktya shraddhaya Puruṣottama, that Krishna is the presiding deity of this month. And so you should worship Krishna in this month with 16 different types of paraphernalia every day. You should worship Radha and Krishna. And then there's different activities which are forbidden in this month. And people shouldn't criticize other persons. They shouldn't discuss worldly literature or mundane poetry. They shouldn't eat foodstuffs cooked by other people. They shouldn't do someone else's activities. And then there's activities which are recommended. You should give charity to the Brahmins. You should feed saintly persons every day. You should fast until the 8th part of the day, the late evening, and then take your meal. And then Bhaktivinoda, after saying all these things, he says, now let's wait a minute here. He says, there's 3 types of these transcendentalists, right? Swanishita, Parinishita, and Nirapeksha. So all these descriptions he says above are meant for the Swanishita devotees who have this idea, I have to do this thing. And they have this karma adhikar. They have to do this Puruṣottam Vrata according to the rules given by their charyas. The Nirapeksha sadhaks, he says the Parinishita sadhaks, the Swanishita sadhaks, they have to do all these things. The Parinishita, they follow according to the acharyas. And they have a different perspective. What we're trying to discuss today is we're trying to understand what is the injunction for the Parinishita. We want to give up being Swanishita, and we can't imitate the Nirapeksha Bhaktas. The Nirapeksha Bhaktas, Bhaktivinoda says, they just take Mahaprasad. And they chant, maybe actually do some kirtan or something. They're not really interested. Rather, we would like to follow what is the Parinishita sadhaks, and they follow the rules and regulations according to their particular acharyas. So then Bhaktivinoda gives a very important verse, which is from Vishnu Rahasya, is quoted in Hari Bhakti Vilas, and this verse is quoted by Thakur Bhaktivinoda also in his Bhajan Rahasya. And the verse describes, Indriyartesh asaktanam sadaiva vimala mati parito shayato vishnum nopavaso jitatmana. The intelligence of someone who's not attached to the objects of the senses is always pure because he's engaged in pleasing the Lord. Therefore, there's no need for such a person to observe austere vows. Such activities are for those whose senses are not controlled. So we observe these things, and perhaps we may be Swanishita, or hopefully we may be Parinishita, but either way, we are enjoined by our acharyas that we should do some observance during Puruṣottama-māsa, during Ekādaśī, during Cāturmasya, during Kartika, to increase our devotion. And Bhaktivinoda, the Vishnu Rahasya is saying that these activities are for those whose senses are not controlled. They'll help us to control our senses, in other words. Again, Bhaktivinoda quotes from Hari Bhakti Vilas, some verses with the very end of Hari Bhakti Vilas, where Gopal Bhatta Goswamis summarize the activities of a renunciate who's completely committed himself to a life of worship. Eva mekanti nam praya kirtanam smaranam prabho kurvatam parama pritya krityam anyan narochate bhavena kena chit preshta shimurtir angri sevane shad ichaisam swamantrena swarasenaiva tadvidi vihitesh eva nityeshu pavartante swayamhite. The devotees who are exclusive devotees, ekantic bhaktas of the Lord, for them, there's no other activity other than chanting the holy name and remembering Krishna's pastimes. So they have no ruchi, he says, for any other type of activity because parama pritya, they have this topmost taste for kirtanam smaranam prabho, for doing kirtan in remembrance of Krishna. And he says, bhavena kena chit preshta srimurti angri saving. They may serve their personal deities according to their own particular mood. And they set these rules of worship for their own personal taste. And they do these other things, this taking bath, the regular duties, and they do these nitya karmas. They conduct them automatically. They're not so much concerned about that. So Bhaktivinoda concludes then that the devotees observe Puruṣottama-māsa according to their perspective adhikar. So according to these distinctions of Swanishita, Parinishita, and Ekanta. So the Swanishita Bhakta is someone who has material desires, who is not able to remember the Lord all the time, who is attached to their body, and they have faith in karma. Better than that person is the Parinishita Bhakta. They understand, maybe they also have some attachments, but they understand, no, I don't have to follow all these rules of karma, but I should just follow what the acharyas have given. That's what's important. Otherwise, it becomes so confusing. We observe Ekādaśī so that you can have sex with your wife during your menstrual period. We observe Cāturmasya so you can go to the heavenly planets. It's crazy. And devotees become very, very confused. So we should understand these things according to these three distinctions, the Swanishita, Parinishita, and Ekanta, according to the two general divisions of Smārta Shastra and Paramartik Shastra. And the Smārta Shastra is especially for the Swanishita devotees. And the Parinishita devotees, they may follow, they may not follow, but they're going to follow what's given by their acharyas, by their Gurudev. And the Ekanta Bhaktas, they may follow, they may not follow. They're on a completely liberated platform. Now, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in Kalina Kalpataru, Bhaktivinoda's first songbook that he wrote when he was the headmaster in Kendrapar in Orissa, he wrote a song called Krishna Nama Dhari Kutlabhav. And in that song, there's a verse I'd like to sing for you. Vidhi-mārga ratte jane, swadhinata ratnadane, Rāga-mārga karam pravesh, Rāga-vāsavarti hoya, parakiya bhavashraye, labhe jiva Krishna premavesh. He says, when someone follows this vidhi-mārga ratte jane, why do we do that? Then Swadhinatra Ratnadani, the holy name, gives a jewel of independence. And Rāga-mārga karana pravesh, it gives someone pravesh, or entrance on the path of Rāga-mārga, the spontaneous devotion. And then that person, Rāga-vasavarti hoya, they become overwhelmed by this attachment to the Lord. And parakiya bhavashraya, they take shelter of the mood of parakiya. And labhe jiva Krishna premavesh. They go on to become absorbed in love for Krishna. Now, this may sound like a very, very high thing, but Srila Prabhupada spoke in one lecture in Vrindavan on the 12th of November 1972. He said, Vaidhi Bhakti is apprenticeship. Real Bhakti, para Bhakti, is Raga-nuga Bhakti. This Raga-nuga Bhakti we have to come to after surpassing Vaidhi Bhakti. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the conclusion we're trying to offer today to the devotees, why do we observe these different Vratas and Ekādaśī and Cāturmasya and Puruṣottama-māsa and Kartika and Bhishma Panchaka, etc., etc.? We should do them for bhakti, but devotees do it following not the smārta-vicāra, the consideration of the smārta Brahmins, but the gosvāmī-vicāra. And we should try to leave the lower platform of swanishita and come to the platform of parinishita, where we have faith in Guru and Sadhu, and we follow his particular instructions. I once asked my Guru Maharaj about doing some brata during the month of Kartika. Guru Maharaj, I have this idea, and do this and this. And Guru Maharaj said, if you want to, you go ahead. And I said, Guru Maharaj, I don't really want to do it. If it pleases you, I want to do it. And Guru Maharaj said, if you want to do, you do. And I was becoming confused. And I said that 3 times, Guru Maharaj, I just want to do it for you. And Guru Maharaj said, anyway, if you want to do, you do. And Guru Maharaj said, I'm not going to tell you. And then Guru Maharaj told me, Bhaktivinoda Thakur observed Cāturmasya. He observed these kind of vows, and so did Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. He said, but our Srila Prabhupada didn't, and I haven't. But if you want to, you can. That was his personal instruction to me. I also heard him instruct other devotees that they should follow at least certain aspects of it. He spoke in different ways at different times to different persons. And so we want to come to that level of parinishita sadak, where we follow the instructions of Guru, we take shelter of him, and we understand otherwise it's so very, very confusing. All these different benefits and rules and regulations, and should we follow it, should we not follow it? The conclusion of Hari Bhakti Vilas, again, is all that's necessary to do is someone should just take shelter of the holy name. And someone has attachment for that. They may follow this, they may not follow this. Another inspiration we get from this, in which Srila Prabhupada and our acharyas have instructed us, that the main activity during Puruṣottama-māsa, during Cāturmasya, during Kartika, is to increase our chanting. And we're not so much concerned about giving charity every day and fasting so much, but someone may do it. And many acharyas have done it. And don't think that it's just some smārta kind of thing or some external thing to do it, because if we do that, if we observe some fast in those days, we punish our body in that way, then our body, we get more control over our senses. And if we do it as a service for Guru and Krishna becomes pleased with that. The Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu describes, Krishna tad bhakta karunya matra labhaika hetuka pushti marga taya kaschit iyam raganugochate. That this Rāga-mārga, this Rāga-nuga bhakti, it says, matra labhaika hetuka, there's only one cause for it. And that's the mercy of Krishna and his devotees. It's the only way we can attain Rāga-nuga bhakti. Jiva Goswami, in his commentary on this verse of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he says the word matra in the verse is significant, that some people might think that offering karmas or karmic activities as a cause of Vaidhi bhakti and offering varnashram dharma, he says that can't be the cause of Rāga-nuga. Sometimes people think that oh, I'm going to offer my varnashram dharma and that's going to give me Rāga-nuga bhakti. He says, no. The only cause of attaining Rāga-nuga bhakti is the mercy of Krishna and his devotees. And therefore, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says very clearly, Vidi marga rata jani swadinata ratnadani Rāga-mārga karana pravesh. That we'll enter into that Rāga-mārga by doing these regulated principles, but by doing them for the pleasure of Guru and Krishna. Not like the Swanishita Sadhak, who's doing it just because he's absorbed in thinking of his own benefit. I have to do this, I'm going to get so much benefit for this. But we want to come to the point of being Parinishita Sadhak and understanding this is for the pleasure of Guru and Krishna. And if we do that, then Rupa Goswami assures us in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Mata Labhata Hetuka. This is the only cause of Rāga-nuga bhakti. So we observe this Puruṣottama-māsa, Cāturmasya Vratas. We do these things to help us to come to the path of Rāga-mārga, or Rāga-nuga bhakti. So it's a great mystery, and it's a topic which really you can't speak about very much in public, because you're going to find different people have different types of adhikar. And there's going to be some Swanishita sadhaks there who just say, no, you have to do varnashram dharma. And of course we have to do all this Cāturmasya and things, otherwise you're going to go to hell. You may have a very few Parinishita sadhaks and maybe one Nirapeksha sadhak, and we don't have to discuss it with that person is already motivated on their own. Mostly we're interested in speaking with the Swanishita and the Parinishita, but we don't want to disturb the mind of the Swanishita. And let's encourage them to do all these regulated principles and things. And even though they're thinking, I'm doing it so it'll purify me, I'm observing Pandava Nirjala Ekādaśī so that I can become free from my offenses and my sin. Let them think like that. And as they become more purified, then they may realize, if I want to advance further, I have to take shelter of a Ragatmaka Bhakta. A devotee, I have to take inspiration from a Ragatmaka Bhakta. Ragatmaka Bhakta means a devotee in the spiritual world, in Krishna Lila. And I do that by taking shelter of my Gurudev. Through my Gurudev, I do that. And by pleasing my Gurudev, by pleasing Krishna, by following these rules and regulations, not for the sake of following them by themselves, but doing them for their pleasure, then Rāga-mārga karana pravesh. This gives us entry in the path of Rāga-mārga. And that's why we do these things. So, phew, I did it. It's a big, big discussion. I'd like to ask everybody now, would it please post a verse about going to Golok if Puruṣottama-māsa is observed? Okay, let's see here. That's not the most important verse that Bhaktivinoda gives. Bhaktivinoda, this article is very, very brilliant. He speaks in a very progressive way, little by little. Let's see. So I'd like to, here we go. I'll paste this verse in. Sorry, I don't have diacritics. I didn't have time to put them in. Or I'd like to paste in this other verse, which Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives as a conclusion. And this verse, we should understand. We shouldn't be intimidated by it and think, there's a verse from Vishnu Rahasya, quoted in Hari Bhakti Vilas. Let's just paste in this. We shouldn't be intimidated by it and think that, oh, this doesn't apply to me. This only applies to my Gurudev or to great Vaishnavas. It does apply to great Vaishnavas, but it's also the way to please great Vaishnavas. Because as Vaishnavas, they're pleased, they're attached to hearing the holy name. They're not so much attached to observing austere vows and things. And I could see that with my Guru Maharaj. He said, if you want to do, you can. He said, but I'm not so much inclined for that. Prabhupada wasn't so inclined. But Bhaktivinoda and Bhaktisiddhanta did. If you want to do, you can. It's not that we shouldn't do. But for such Vaishnavas, they're more attached to pleasing Krishna. My Guru Maharaj was more attached to doing his services for Srila Prabhupada. He's more attached to chanting his japa or doing kirtan than he was to doing so many austerities and things. It doesn't mean that we don't do that, as we've heard from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, but we should follow the path of the Paranishita Sadhak and go under the guidance of Guru. So I want to ask the devotees now if anybody has any reflections they're walking away with. What do you think of all this? Gaurnitai Prabhu, you have any thoughts about all this?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you very much. My understanding is that very important to learn the original culture, because yes, we learning the highest bhakti, but still we are living in a material world and we have to behave exemplarily. And the next generation is very important to
And that's why, let me interject a little. That's why I think it's important that we don't just follow this fasting from spinach and yogurt and milk and things just blindly, but why do we do it?
Yeah.
Because we don't want to hurt other living entities.
Yeah. And that's very important because because we are very new, we are coming from the Western culture, practically don't know the reasons. So thank you very much to explain all these details. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prabhuji. And now, Jai Gaur, what do you think? What are you walking away with?
I really appreciated a lot of points. One thing that I liked was something you posted earlier. You were saying like unwanted attachments are easily vanquished by a devotee association, but at the same time, we should actively try to destroy them by engaging in devotional service, like that point. And kind of like the main point you were making, I really appreciated too, is that these Vratas are observed for increasing the strength of our devotion. I was thinking that like, at least for myself, it's easy to become relaxed as far as Ekādaśī goes. This means, Ekādaśī means, oh, I do the same thing that I normally do, but I just don't eat grains and beans. But then when you actually, remember that these days is for increased hearing and chanting, and when you do that, like, wow, there's so much potency in this. This is a special day, and I can feel some major reciprocation. And I also had a question.
Okay.
You were talking about Uttana Ekādaśī. Is it the most important because that's the most potent one? Because you were saying in the story with Ratri Devi how that, each day would be more potent than the last, and this is the last Ekādaśī during Cāturmasya.
Yeah, it's the most potent for that. It's also the only Ekādaśī that is directly mentioned that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu observed. And that's also the day that Krishna wakes up, and it's considered each one of the months of Cāturmasya becomes more and more powerful until the final month. And when Puruṣottama-māsa then falls in Cāturmasya, you can imagine that that's going to be a very powerful Puruṣottama-māsa. It's going to be like this is powerful. And the Kartika, it gets more and more powerful toward the end of the month, and therefore we have Bhishma Panchaka ending with Uttana Ekādaśī. Yes. Okay, is Bana Biharni there?
Yes. She
You have Bana Biharni, are you walking away with any impressions, thoughts?
I'm just really thankful that you're helping us think a bit deeper about all of these things because they're often confusing to me. But I also want to have the proper respect and appreciation for these different observances. So thank you. It's really nice.
Thank you. That's a nice comment. And what about Luke? Any comment from you? You like the part about the beard, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That was my favorite part. Also not leaving home. That sounds pretty good. The other day we were reading from the stealing the Shamantika jewel. For the first time I noticed that it says there that when Krishna was gone for so many days fighting with Jambavan, the residents of Dwarka prayed to goddess Durga for his protection. And I thought that was really special, really interesting, because there's so many ways you could misunderstand that. Like I have a friend here who he likes to worship Durga and Krishna. And I think he's still a little bit confused about which one is actually, most worshipable, who's a devotee of who. So I wonder, if he comes across this section, it might really throw him off. Like, well, look, clearly Durga is the one protecting Krishna here. But I wanted to share this because it really reveals your point that you're making about the intention. The mood is really so essential when it comes to any practice we might take up. There's people who strictly observe Ekādaśī for totally fruitive reasons, or even they worship Shalagram Shila for totally fruitive, totally materialistic reasons. So with a deeper appreciation for these austerities that we're invited to do, especially the most important one being just chanting good rounds and chanting more rounds, it really helps. I think the potency is so much greater when there's a deep appreciation, a deep realization of what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Good. Thank you very much. A really nice comment. Appreciate it. Nice about Jambavan and the Buddha. That's a good example of Swanishita sadhaka, with someone who is following the smārta-vicāra, smārta shastra. It says in the shastra. So now we'd like to hear, actually this whole lecture tonight was dedicated to, it was named after one particular devotee, that's Lila Puruṣottama-māsa. Because it's Puruṣottama-māsa, it's his month. So I'd like to ask Lila Puruṣottama-ji, what are you walking away with? What are your realizations?
Well, I want to thank you that you...
Speak loud, please.
I want to thank you that you brought up this categorization of the adhikar, because now it's much more clear why there are so many conflicts among devotees when they are discussing these topics.
Yes.
Just figure that, then you just like you can't figure out why. Like, it's such a simple statement, maybe for your adhikar, and you totally disturbed someone with that statement.
Right, right.
So helpful in that regard. And in that regard, also, I would like to ask you, as you mentioned your story with Gaur-Govinda Maharaj, as you were asking him. Now, in one sense, I can, if I analyze myself, then it might not be so easy for oneself to identify properly one's adhikar. And in that sense, the guru could be essential help in that regard. So in that sense, I would like expect the guru to play that role to tell you what's proper for you according to your adhikar.
Yeah.
So if you could share some thoughts on it, like
one thing that particular instruction that Guru Maharaj gave me was for me at that particular time in that particular place, and it's not necessarily for me at this particular time in this particular place either. We all need to approach Guru like that and have faith in it, if we're not interested in approaching Guru. And Guru doesn't just mean our Diksha Guru, but it means some senior Vaishnava that we're taking shelter of, we have faith in, who knows us. If we're not interested in doing that, then what is our motivation? We're just doing it thinking I'm going to make advancement by the strength of my sadhana. But we have no strength in our sadhana. Prabodhananda Saraswati says you can't do sadhana in this age. But we're doing it for the pleasure of Guru and Krishna. And so as we paste it in this quote from Vishnu Smriti, from the Hari Bhakti Vilas, that a devotee, a great devotee, he doesn't get pleasure doing all these vratas and things. Sometimes he considers them to be annoying because they just get in the way of his chanting the holy name. And we want to please that devotee. On the other hand, that devotee may see us and say, really, you're a very materialistic person, and you should just stop watching television every day. You should do this or that, and you should have some basic things and try to control yourself. But then we should also understand, I like Bhaktivinoda's comment very much, that the purpose of these austerities is not that we have a big party the day after Kartik's over and we have a big feast, which Vaishnavas generally do. I've attended a few parties like that with the Gaudiya Mat and with some Babajis and others. That's a traditional thing, because whatever you fasted from during that month, you're supposed to break it on the day after by taking that. And the devotees are naturally inspired and they're happy. And I get to have pakoras again, sweet rice, oh my God. They're very, very happy. But if we think, then my purpose is to have a big party after doing all this austerity, then we're not going to get the proper result. The purpose is that we can eventually come to the point where we're detached from sense gratification all the time. That's my humble thoughts on that. Thank you for taking part. I was thinking so much about tonight when I was speaking. I have to say it as I enter Prabhu, because he was so much into all this. And sometimes devotees might think, come on, give me a break. Just chant the holy name. What are you not shaving for and doing all these vratas and things? But there are many exalted Vaishnavas. In this kind, this is all kind of new for us, but there are many exalted Gaudiya Mat devotees and Babajis and others who observe Cāturmasya not because they're Swanishtita, but because they're Paranishtita, because they want to get some entrance into Raga-mārga Bhakti. And they understand it's a long, long ways away from me. But if I fast like this, if I do these austerities, then it's going to help me to overcome and control my senses and control my mind.
I was once asking him about this topic particularly, and he explained me, we were more of us in the room, and he told us that our goal is to always remember Krishna. And it's easier done when all the conditions, environment is favorable. But we may need some training for remembering the Lord even in the hard situations. So that's why we may use these vows and vratas and austerities as the, say, artificially putting us in a more difficult situation and train ourselves to remember the Lord even in such a situation.
Nice. So when the day comes and we're sick in the hospital bed or something like that, we have this back.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's very nice.
With the like the final test of leaving the body. So he said it won't be easy, and you better be trained for any situation to remember the Lord.
Nice. Thank you for sharing it. Okay. So
And yeah, I just want to one quick thing.
yeah.
Could you say the name of the song from Kalyana Kalpataru where you quoted the verse from?
Yeah, it's called, I'll just paste it in. Mm-hmm. And I'll go ahead and paste in the verse too, why not? Such a nice verse. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Now how about Reed? What are you walking away with today? What do you think of all of this?
I appreciated your at the beginning. I appreciated how you explained like what the reason for not taking spinach or milk or yogurt is, because I always was wondering that ever since Cāturmasya started, and it's nice to get that clarification. And also, I wanted to ask like a question for you to clarify something that you said. You mentioned that on Ekādaśī, if we one who doesn't take Mahaprasadam, even if it has grains in it, will get leprosy. Is that what you said?
No, if someone thinks that, Hari Bhakti Vilas says that if someone thinks that Mahaprasad is contaminated, then they're going to get such a sinful reaction. And even if they're thinking that an Ekādaśī, Mahaprasad is never contaminated. Why then do we observe Ekādaśī? Because devotees are not interested in becoming free from pop. I didn't cultivate that line of thought very much, but devotees are not interested in cultivating freedom from pop. But our purpose is Bhakti Janani. This is the mother of devotion. We want to do it to please Guru and Krishna. This is Madhava Tithi. This is the day of Krishna. It's not different from Krishna. And we do it because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mother was instructed by Mahaprabhu to do it. Not because we have the smārta-vicāra, I want to become free from sin, whatever like that. As far as the vegetables and things, the spinach and the yogurt and milk fast and like that, I would encourage devotees to do it if you can. If you're traveling and you're in some place where it's not raining, then it may be a little meaningless. But we may do it because it pleases Srila Prabhupada. And we may do it because it's a little bit of an austerity, and by doing that austerity, it helps me to become free from sense gratification. Those are good reasons for it. But even if someone's doing that, I'm observing this fast, I still wonder sometimes, why do you think you're doing it? Well, as I said, why fast from spinach? Why not fast from carrots? Why not fast from beets or tomatoes? Or why particularly spinach? It's a nice thing to understand what were the reasons behind it.
Yeah. Thank you, Guru.
Okay, thank you, Reed. Okay, anybody else would like, Jalangi Mataji or Maya Pochanda, would you like to comment anything? What are you walking away with? Savyasachika was here also. Savyasachika, would you like to tell us what you're walking away with tonight? You have to unmute your mic. Are you speaking? I can't hear you. Nobody can hear you. It shows that your mic is still muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Forgive me for my simplified English. As you mentioned that every different type of devotee need to make an extra effort during Ekādaśī day or during Kartika or during Cāturmasya, extra effort toward achieving that goal which they're qualified for. So as you explained, there are different goals on different levels of devotion, but the effort is always extra, right? So whatever we are looking for, usually during that period of time, like Kartik, we do extra effort to achieve that goal, and it gives us experience that it's possible. So, and I appreciate that you mentioned that the goals should be chosen according to the qualification. We should not think about becoming good smelling apsaras in heaven instead of bad smelling electricians during Kali Yuga on the planet Earth. But still we have to do extra effort toward correct sadhana during those days. And I noticed many times, I noticed that devotees, even after Ekādaśī, when they, let's say, chant 1 lakh first time maybe, or second time in a life, or they fast, they usually say it's not so difficult. It's like the first experience devotees share after Vratas. They say it was not so as difficult as I was thinking. So I see that many times when we fast, for example, once a day for 1 month, then we discover that it's possible to eat less. And it makes me think always that devotees actually, they don't chant more, or they don't simplify their life. In most of the cases, they're just afraid that it can be very difficult for me. But these short periods of time, like 1 month or 4 months or 1 day, Ekādaśī, it gives real experience that it is actually possible. So that after that, as you mentioned, instead of feast on the next day, devotee may think, I can live this simple life, I can continue like that. Why should I come back to my 3 times per day meal with a lot of overloading food when I was so happy for last 1 month? So this positive experience opens eyes to the more simple, blissful life in devotional service. And then devotees may continue for the rest of the life. So there's extra efforts usually give this benefit. They break the fear. One boy in Gurukul, 11-year-old boy in 1999, when I was ashram teacher in Mayapur Gurukul, he found me during Nirjala Ekādaśī chanting all day, because that day I was thinking, let me chant more. So I didn't tell anyone, but he found me as a teacher. I was his teacher, and he asked me, Mahashai, what are you doing? I told him, this is secret, this is private, no one should know. No, and children, when you tell them like this, they cannot eat and sleep. They have to find out what is going on. So that boy told me, Mahashai, I will not tell anyone, but let me also do what you do. Just tell me what are the rules. I told him, no eating, no drinking, but I told him you can drink, but I will chant until I can. So whole day. And then he told other boys, same age, small boys, ashram. And the 4 boys came to me on that day. Actually, it was a day before Nirjala Ekādaśī evening. I was preparing this. So they told me, let us have a competition, Mahashai. 4 of us against you. Whatever rounds you chant tomorrow, then 4 of us will combine our rounds. And who will win? Who will win? He will have to tell stories about Krishna. As many stories, as many rounds is a difference. And because they loved to ask me different stories, and I had to read extra. I had to find them. So they were enjoying associate. They wanted to get more stories, and they made it private competition. And then on the next day, I got up at midnight, or I don't remember. Oh, from sunrise, yes, from sunrise to sunrise on Nirjala Ekādaśī. I was chanting in the temple room all night and till Mangalarati. And 4 of them, they won 48 rounds. I chanted 146. And there was 48 rounds difference. All of them came to me, and I had to tell so many stories. But another thing, that 5th boy who found out from his friends that they have private secret competition with the teacher, he himself decided that he will also do 1 lakh that day. The boy who was like 11, and Vijay, his name was. So that on a Dvadashi, that boy came to me crying with a choked voice. And I was thinking something really terrible happened to the boy, because during like morning time, he's crying, cannot speak. I had to pacify him. And he was telling, I could not do it. I could not do it. So I asked him, what couldn't you do? he told me, yesterday I found out that you and four of your ashram boys have competition, and I decided to chant one lakh. And my teachers, they put me to sleep at evening on the Pandava Ekādaśī, whenever the ashram goes to sleep, and he was resisting. He was trying, they forced him to sleep. He was a small boy. They never chanted more than 4 rounds a day. So he chanted 48 rounds that day only, not 64. And it was devastation for his thing. And the other boys, they changed it like 64, 64, 50, I don't remember, something like that. So that on the Dvadashi, all 5 of them, they told me, you know, why those big boys from big ashram, why they are always struggling to chant 16 rounds? Because big boys, they had to chant it because they were on a schedule for initiation, chanting pranamas, and the small boys, they usually chant 4 maximum. So all 5 of them, they told me it is not difficult at all to chant 64 even. What to say about 16? So 3 of them, from that same day, they started to chant 16 rounds because forever it was a deep impression in their mind. Things are not difficult at all. If 64 is easy, because they're like competition, because they like privacy, they like something intimate, secret thing. So they developed experience which helped them, and few of them immediately after like 2-3 years they got initiated because they could chant 16 rounds every day. So they broke the dam of belief that things are difficult. So I just gave this example so that what you're saying, that after Vrata, as a result, we should like to continue our Vrata because we found it very beneficial. Why should we stop then? So I appreciate this point because this is a very important point, that instead of thinking about sense gratification, which we are gaining as a result of Vrata, the benefit, we should think that finally I could give it up, that sense gratification due to this Vrata. And I can keep continuing. So I like this very much. I have experience like that. When I keep fasting on Ekādaśī food, after Kartik finish for a few more weeks, just because I loved it so much, for example, and then I cannot give it up. So we are afraid. We are afraid of purity. We are afraid of extra endeavors. But when we do them for one day, then we find out it was not so difficult. And those extra efforts on every Kartik, on every Cāturmasya, on every year after year, they benefit us with the new experiences of extra sadhana, and then we are enriched. After many years, we find ourselves easy doing those things. So I agree with you that we should continue. Thank you very much. Sorry for long speech.
Thank you. It reminds me too, when we're speaking about Prabhupada or my Guru, or another example comes to my mind of one devotee's name was Haridas Das, who was a compiler of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. I don't know if he was even chanting 16 rounds a day, but he was writing for about 20 hours a day. That was his seva. And we see Srila Prabhupada was very little. And when devotees asked him, he said, I'm chanting 16 rounds. Other times in his life, he chanted more. But that was because Prabhupada had his ruchi. He was doing his particular service. So it's not hard and fast for everyone, but for general devotees, increasing our japa, like you said, is such a nice thing. I'd like to hear something from Mayapur Chandraprabhu now. You look very thoughtful. I hope you're not angry.
Thank you. So, I mean, I heard that was new. I mean, that the biggest Ekādaśī is the Dev Utthāna Ekādaśī. That's Utthāna Ekādaśī. And I mean, I always like to hear that the fasting is not so necessary, as much as you put the effort for chanting, and as much as that is I always had one thing. We do the Nirjal Ekādaśī versus the Ekādaśī with the water, and Nirjal is always considered kind of a superior austerity. But medically speaking, I mean, we don't support that so much. You know, water is such an essential ingredient. So I was always trying to reconcile that. I mean, how to reconcile that fact. Maybe the medical science hasn't come to that level of understanding whether Nirjal fast is giving better. I mean, it of course gives the more, I mean, spiritual power, more power with your, because you are being austere and controlling your, I mean, sense of thirst for the whole day. So which is definitely helpful spiritually. But I mean, medically speaking, it's not so advisable. I mean, I don't know. So how to reconcile that fact? And then with that, we have a recent that Nobel Prize into the medicine couple of years back, I think last year or so, that they have this prolonged fasting where we fast for more than 15 hours. If body fasts for more than 15 hours, then body's immunity goes up. The helper T cells function goes up, and that is kind of very helpful, so that people who do that, they usually don't get the cancers and, I mean, such illnesses. And that's why that person got the Nobel Prize. One of the Japanese scientists, he proved that, and that's why. So that really, I mean, that corresponds very well with our what we do every fortnight, fasting. You know, if we do that, really, it is, I mean, not only helps us spiritually, but it helps us to keep our health, I mean, good, so that we can do service better also in the, I mean, so that we don't get as much as sick, and we can do the service better and maintain the body better also. But again, I mean, in that also, I did not uh, find out about whether it should be nirjal or whether it should be that with that study, I did not find that detail, whether somebody is completely fasting for water or not. You know? So I mean, so that one part I was, I mean, of course, whatever our I mean, scripture says always, that must be, I mean, by all means, it will be right compared to our modern knowledge of medicine. So that was my one of the dilemma, that how nasal fast is better when it's not good for body. Yes.
For devotees who don't know, Maya Prachandra Prabhu is a general practitioner. Is that right?
I'm a pediatrician, so you can, I mean, as good as general practitioner, you know, but for children.
Yeah, he's a doctor in Newburgh, New York, upstate New York, and he takes care of so many devotees, and he's so very, very loving. He's a professional medical man. So I can't comment about the medical benefits of fasting. That's your profession, not mine. I can't say. But I can comment that it's not only fasting from food and water, but Shastra also encourages us not to sleep. Now, if I ask you about that, I think you're going to tell me that's really bad. Just like we just heard Sabyasachi Prabhu was saying that he chanted from dawn to dawn the next day, 24 hours he was chanting. And that's a beautiful thing. But physically, I don't think there's any normal doctor today who would recommend such a thing. Going without sleep is very, very detrimental to health. So my thought is this, Prabhuji, that I don't know if we can so easily equate all these things as being beneficial for physical health also. Although fasting is, and Prabhupada notes that also in several places in his books. But fasting from water or fasting from sleep, that's generally not recommended for good health. But what I find, when you sleep less, when you do more austerities on your body, whatever those austerities are, you become thin, I like to call it. I call it thin. That means your bodily consciousness is very thin, and you're fragile, and your heart is not so covered. You can call out to Krishna in a greater, more easy way. And so I see that as a benefit, a spiritual benefit. Physically, I can't comment like you, I no longer do Nirjal fast because doctors just told me you just can't do that. And also Shastra says, to support that point, that fasting is recommended, or it's an injunction for everyone from the age of 8, I think it is, to 80, something like that. So in other words, after the age of 80, you don't have to fast. And before the age of 8, you don't have to. And why is that? Because those young children, their bodies are developing very intensely in that period, and they need the nutrients, they need the grains and whatever. And old people, they're so weak and old, it may be very hard for them to fast. They don't have to do that. Interesting discussion. Thank you for taking part. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Natalia,
One other thing.
Hare Krishna. Natalia, are you there? There she is. Hare Krishna. You're not outside today, you're inside. Any reflections from you today? What are you walking away with?
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Yes, thank you very much. It was very inspiring for me that obeying all these vows helps to increase devotion and to give up attachments. And I was thinking, it is so easy. I should tell everyone it is so easy. But then you said we should not disturb those who are doing something for their karma. Okay, we should not disturb. Yeah, and the main idea is the most important is the inner motivation, inner intention, and it is quite a long period to find real adhikara. I think it is the best, maybe what I can do now, what we can do also to become. You also said that to become steady.
Yeah, one devotee was with us this morning. We were speaking a little about some of these topics. It's Gauranga Prabhu, and he was mentioning how years ago he was trying to do so many austerities and things, but he found that his mind would just become so disturbed that maybe he was able to do the austerities, but it wasn't beneficial for his bhakti. So we need to, as Sabyasachi Prabhu was pointing out, we need to push, but we can't go beyond our means. And therefore Bhakti Vinod, he recommends 3 days of fasting, and then you work your way up to 1 month of austerities. And then maybe you can work your way up to 4 months of austerities. In a similar way, Bhakti Vinod in Harinam Chintamani, he recommends that one gradually increase their chanting, 4 rounds at each time. From 4 rounds, you start to 8 rounds, and then to 12 rounds, and then to 16, and like that, we continually increase. And we may chant more if we can, but in generally, Sanatana Goswami, commenting on Hari Bhakti Vilas, he says that our chanting is for the pleasure of our Gurudev. It's a service for our Gurudev. So we should have, that chanting should be done in discussion with him. Not just that, oh Gurudev, I've given up all my services, now I'm chanting, I'm a very advanced devotee. But I'm chanting because I want to do service. I'm chanting because it's going to give me clarity in the mind that I can do better service. But if the chanting becomes an escape, like a vacation or something away from service, that's not good either. Both things should be there.
And also, Sabyasachi Prabhu inspired me. There should be a vow to learn at least one new story about Krishna every day.
Your children will be very happy, huh?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so I want to ask now, Anapayani, do you have anything you're walking away with? Quickly, come and tell us. Speak loudly.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much to all the devotees who shared their realizations. Thank you so much, Madhavananda Prabhu, for
Ujjwala Rasiga Mataji is here afterwards too. Go ahead.
Important topic, and it was really important to understand this 2 directions, Smarta and Goswami, in connection with this question. So how we want to follow these 4 rules and regulations because of the Goswami principles, and also to understand that there are 3 types of devotees in connection with this. Thank you so much. It was really relevant and helpful, because honestly, for me, it was difficult all the time to get some text on Ekādaśī or on some particular month with the weird stuff, which is not correct with the bhakti.
And if
the
you observe
rest.
Ekādaśī, you'll get a great husband.
Yeah, something like this. And it's so really weird for me. And I just, okay, thank you. I always reply like, thank you. But I really didn't want to read it even. So, and I have a question. So you said that he was emphasizing, and our chair is emphasizing that we have to give up this first type of attitude towards this regulations. I think was it
Svanishita?
Yes, Svanishita. But okay, I can say, okay, it's easy to give up, and I really don't relate to that. But honestly, if, for example, I'm doing this because I want to come closer to this Rāga-mārga and please my Guru Maharaj and Acharyas, but if I hear something nice, for example, as you said, so if you will not eat salt, you will get a sweet voice or something like this. And I was thinking, okay, it will be a nice addition to my... So it means that I'm not really dedicated to become closer on this path of Raganuga Bhakti. So what should we do with that?
Well, who can tell you? And this is the point, really. This is why this topic is not for mass discussion, because it's an individual discussion. We were having some talk about this recently in a big group. That's what I started off with commenting on. And different devotees were disturbed by it. And that's natural, because you can't tell everybody, look, you should chant this number of rounds. You should get up at this time of day. You should do this particular thing. People are going to act according to their adhikar, according to their faith. So if you have some desire to avoid salt so that you'll get a sweet voice, then maybe you have some adhikar like that. Maybe your adhikar is not completely pure. Or maybe it's mixed and you think, oh, I understand this is not the topmost thing. And then let me ask my Gurudev. That's what I would suggest. That someone, hopefully, that they may think, yeah, I can understand just having a sweet voice is not the topmost thing. So let me see what my Gurudev says, because I know I'm a little doubtful about this. This doesn't sound like the best reason to observe this Vratas, so I get a sweet voice.
Yeah, so I didn't understand what exactly you mean by asking my Guru Maharaj. What exactly?
So we should go to Gurudev and say, Guru Maharaj, I'm thinking to do this Vrata so that I get a sweet voice. That'll be good for my service.
But the question is, if I ask Guru Maharaj, I want to follow this Rāga-mārga, but at the same time, I see in my heart that if somebody offer me this benediction, like an addition, I will be...
Sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I will not reject that. So what should I do? So and it's kind of...
So we should speak with Guru. And Gurudev understands our heart. And he'll tell you, he may slap you and say, that's a nonsense thing. Don't worry about that. You're going to die pretty soon anyway. Or he may tell you, no, that's very, very good. You should do that. Not only that, you should also avoid oil, and you should sleep on the floor, and you should eat like a cow, and you should do all these different things. He may tell you that. And then you'll follow Gurudev, and that way you'll feel some inspiration from him. Okay? All right. Ujjwala Rasidya Mataji, are you still there? Do you have any comments?
Yes. Dandavats to you, Prabhu. Sorry, I'm unable to turn on the video, but such wonderful discussion, Prabhu. First thing is, yes, it's good to know why certain things are not done. Second thing is the intention behind doing it, based on individual capacity of what we might be able to do. These are good. And third thing is, Prabhu, generally, when these auspicious time comes in, like Adhika-māsa and Kartika-māsa, I generally look forward to it because I see that as a time, a helping time that is coming to me to liberate me from this pullings of, mind and body. I look forward to that kind of experience. If I look at it as an austerity and a voluntary difficulty to take upon, I am losing the benefit, extra benefit of what I would get when I look forward to the wonderful experience which I would not get otherwise. So that way I look forward to. And I look forward to not overeating and taking only that is needed for the body. So those things I look forward to, which is good. But my prayer and my hope is that should continue after this Adhik Maas and after Kartik also. So it's not like, oh, now this is done, let me celebrate. That did not really make much sense, because the whole point is to get liberated from these things, and they have to continue. So this year my focus is that I've been when as devotees were saying, when we realize that there is more potential within us to get away from this and prepare our body and mind to offer better service, that was wonderful. And my hope is that somehow or other, if that can be continued and then just upgraded every year, but not like, like an elephant bath thing. I mean, do it and then not do it again. And then you faced it back and forth. Didn't seem to be of greater use. When I'm already looking forward to celebrate it, what's the point of doing this the whole month? So that was my hope, Prabhu, and I wanted to see if there is anything that you would like to comment in regards to how to just keep that going. Because within us, we feel like, oh, I wish this continues for the rest of the life. So our services can be done, better. We are ready for the service, not pulled by, the body and mind. I wish that can continue. So is there anything that you would recommend or suggest or instruct, Prabhu, that all these so-called austerities but liberating things can only be gradual stepping stones every year, so, and can only get better? So that was my request to you, to see from a practical standpoint and from a motivating standpoint, to see how this can just stay steady and get incremental. That's one thing, Prabhu. And after that, if you are inclined to, regarding the medical aspect, I had those concerns too. I can share a little bit if that can ease up and help us as devotees. That's later if you want to.
For those who know North Carolina, why don't you comment about that?
Yeah, Prabhu. Yes. So regarding the medical aspect, as you said, 8 to 80 between that time, and no other underlying medical conditions. And one shouldn't be exposed to the environment of dehydration, like going out in the hot sun like that. So if these conditions are provided to the body with no underlying medical conditions and not exposing to dehydration outside, staying at one place, minimizing the body needs, then this is regarding the Nirjal, Prabhu, that I'm talking about. So staying at one place, minimizing the body needs, no underlying medical conditions, and because we are not sending any food stuff inside the body, there is no energy that is spent on the digestive system that the body is trying to digest. So in that way, the body demand has also come down when the food is not going into our system. And as per the Shastra, when this body demand has cut down and the need for more energy to digest the food has also come down, and when somebody is so much absorbed in the Shastra that the mind is not distracted and no additional calories are spent on the mind to steady it, then naturally the need for the sleep also comes down, because the body is not active and mind is not active, not using too much of calories. So that's why the need for the body also comes down, and it is only natural if the body and mind is running at 0 level with total absorption on something, like for us Krishna Katha, then it's just natural that the necessity of the sleep also comes down. So that way, when they say for Ekādaśīs, devotees don't sleep like that. So when all this criteria is met from external requirement, body demands coming down and mind not being perturbed, with all these requirements are met, then the calorie burnt is at a very minimal level and the need for sleep is naturally low. That's just in regards to the sleep in the Ekādaśīs that is mentioned in the scriptures, how that is possible, or would it be good for the body? So for that question, Prabhu, that's regarding the sleep and the water. Just wanted to add. And regarding no water, when I heard that, I was like, is that really backed up by these medical studies? I think 8 to, I'm not sure the exact number of hours, but 8 to 12 hours, no water, not the 24 hours one. 8 to 12 hours, no food, no water. Was, again, no underlying medical conditions, meeting all that criteria. Then even no water was also found to be beneficial medically also, as long as, that is between 8 to 12 hours, but not 24 hours, not 48 hours, like that, Prabhu. Just wanted to share that.
Okay, thank you. As far as your other comment, question in the beginning about how can we continue this, I was just reflecting on what you said, and it reminded me of some things that Leela Puruṣottama Prabhu had said from Ayendra Prabhu and also Savyasati Prabhu. And you yourself, you're saying that we shouldn't do this thinking, oh, this is so hard, this is such, rather, this is such a wonderful thing. Now I don't have these other obligations. And now this is the only thing I have to do. This should be with great happiness. And Bhaktivinoda repeatedly describes that the question about adhikar has to do with our ruchi, has to do with our taste. And when we finally develop some taste for hearing and chanting, then we give up our inclination for all the rules and regulations and what to speak of family life and bodily desires and obligations and things. So that ruchi is so important, and that ruchi takes place by association with devotees, hearing and chanting with them, and by service. Shrishu Shodha Sunadanasya Vasudeva Kata Ruchi Shan Mahat Sevaya Vipra Punyatirtana Sevana. So, okay, Krishna Kun, do you have some final thing? Okay. So we've gone really, really late today. I went extra long on this because it's a really important topic. We'll be back again next Monday. And I'm not sure, I think we'll have some special topics for the month of Puruṣottama. Anyway, I want to thank everybody very much for taking part today. Shri Puruṣottama-āsa ki, Shri Cāturmasya Vrata ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Vancha Kalpadurubhischa, Kripa Sindhu Devacha, Patitanam Pavanam